Is 6:02 p.m. on the 27th of January, and I'll go ahead and call the meeting into order. Before we start with our agenda, if you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and take roll call, please, Ms. Trimble.
All right, good evening. Beginning with Anderson.
Present.
Becerra.
Present.
Campbell.
Here.
Carlino.
Present.
Farmer.
Present.
Jones.
Present.
Jordan.
Present.
Nelson.
Present.
Nugent.
Present.
Savage.
Present.
Cheryl.
Present.
And Vasika.
Present.
Everyone is here this evening.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much. We have one set of minutes for your consideration this evening, and those are from January 13th, 2025. Do council members have any questions or questions on those minutes? No? Okay, not seeing any in the room or online, then those minutes will remain as submitted. Thank you. The next we'll move on is our committee schedule. Ms. Trimble, do you have any changes for our committee schedule this Wednesday?
There are no changes that I'm aware of.
Okay, excellent. And just for notification to the public here, my computer decided not to open it. Committees will be from about, what is it? Oh, I have it right here. Great, 12:15 to 3 p.m. and all the committee schedule and correlating documents are on the City of Missoula City Council webpage. Next, we'll move on to special presentations and proclamations, and we have a neighborhood council update this evening, the Franklin to Fort Leadership Team Report. So whomever is here from that leadership team, come on up.
Hello, I'm Jen Worrell. It's Worrell. And our update's pretty brief. First, we're in the process of planning our spring general meeting. We're gonna have that at Franklin School. Tentatively, we have that scheduled until just after spring break, but we'll update that once it's finalized. And the second thing is that we're working on formulating our neighborhood action plan. One of our members, Clint, created a document to help us with that. We currently have 4 main priorities. We've been gathering data for the last couple of years from the neighborhood about things they want to see. And our 4 main priorities are housing access and stability, traffic and road safety, biking, sidewalks, and pedestrian use / access, and community well-being. And we'll continue to work on this throughout the year. We do have a work session scheduled for tomorrow at 6 p.m. It's on Teams. So that is going to be our first official meeting on this. And hopefully we're going to have something to present at the general meeting, but we're still working on that. So that is it.
That's excellent.
Updates.
Thank you very much, Ms. World. Any council members have any questions or comments?
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Really appreciate your participation with the Franklin to Fort leadership team and local government. Thank you so much. All right. So that wraps up our special presentations. We have no proclamations this evening. We do have a couple of public hearings, and beyond that, we have our normal course of business, several items actually under the consent agenda. No items under the regular business, but we do have our state legislature updates that will be provided after the regular council business. So with that, I'll move on to the first public hearing. This evening we'll have an opportunity to hear staff presentations as well as those from the sponsor, the owner, and development representatives. And we're going to open the public hearing, take public comment, and then we have received a request by the sponsor of this particular project that our council not take a vote on it because of pending legislation. So there's a representative in the room, so please correct me if I am misspeaking here. But the Land Use and Plan Chair is prepared to take action to send this back to committee and hold it there until we can see what happens with decisions that happen at the legislature. So that is currently how this is teed up, but this is a public hearing, so we will have the opportunity to hear about the annexation of 3300 Razor Drive. And so with that, and then of course we do have a second public hearing, and that is on annexation of 2812 and 2816 South 3rd Street West. Two different public hearings. So we'll start with the first, again, annexation of 3300 Razor Drive, and we'll start with the staff presentation. And we have Dave DeGrandpré here to kick that off online.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I will just start to share my screen. All right, good evening, councilors, Mayor Davis, members of the public. My name is Dave DeGrandpré. I'm a planning supervisor with the City of Missoula Community Planning Development and Innovation Department. And tonight we're holding a public hearing on a petition to annex the Roseburg Resource Company property located at 3300 Howard Razor Drive. As Mayor Davis indicated, due to legislative bills that impact taxation and tax increment finance that are currently under consideration by the state legislature in Helena, the property owner has asked that City Council hold the public hearing tonight, but then continue it, not make a decision pending the outcome of several bills before the legislature. With any annexation, the municipality, as authorized by Montana Code Annotated, has authority over all additions to city limits. And Montana Code Annotated provides several avenues for a property owner or the city to annex property. In this case, the Roseburg Resources Company submitted a petition for the City Council to annex the property. City Council may impose conditions on annexation, and a public hearing is required. With regard to the property itself, it's shaded in purple here on the screen before you. The property abuts the city limits, which are shown in pink to the west and northwest. The property is located within an industrial area. Surrounding land uses include Interstate 90, rail lines, petroleum transmission and storage, and industrial and commercial uses. Access to the property comes from the northwest at Howard Razor Drive, the southwest at Razor Drive, and then the property abuts Coal Mine Road to the southeast. The property is adjacent to the North Reserve Scott Street Urban Renewal District, and representatives of Roseburg Resources Company have expressed interest in becoming part of the Urban Renewal District following annexation. The property itself is fairly unique for the city of Missoula. It is the site of a former particle board plant which ceased operations in 2024. It consists of 13 individual tracts of record and approximately 235 acres total. The buildings are served by existing wells and wastewater treatment systems. There are rail spurs along the south and southwestern property boundary, and you can see the industrial facility, the particle board plant, located in the southeast as well. And I'm sure we all know it, passing by along the interstate from that large forested berm that you can see kind of highlighted in green there on the screen in front of you. The property does contain buried petroleum pipelines. You can see in yellow, running east-west along toward the southern boundary of the property. There's an 8-inch buried pipeline. Also just off-site along the western boundary, there's also a pipeline. And so city staff inquired of the property owner regarding, because it's an industrial site, are there potential contamination issues, human health and safety type issues, things like that. And so the applicant provided an environmental site assessment memorandum documenting phase 1 environmental site investigations. The purpose of an environmental site investigation, or ESA, is to determine if current or past uses have impacted soil or groundwater to the degree that they might impact human health or the natural environment. And the memorandum provided by WGM Group indicates that a groundwater plume containing volatile organic compounds and dissolved metals originates from Missoula landfill, just located to the north, and extends southwest on a small portion of the property abutting the interstate. The contamination is being remediated and is becoming less toxic over time, according to the memorandum. And the memorandum says that the plume is approximately 80 to 105 feet below ground surface and is therefore unlikely to hinder future development, because future development would be on city water. And the memorandum states that no other significant environmental concerns have been documented at this time. Existing water, city water, is not located on the site itself, but can be extended to serve future development. City water, shown in blue with these blue lines, is located near the northwest property area in Howard Razor Drive, could be extended from the southwest and also from the east. Water system extension will be required before additional development is authorized. And then there are some very significant, this is really a significant issue actually in terms of future development of the property, because significant upgrades would be required, of course, water extension. There would have to be looped mains, and it would have to be thought out quite closely in terms of things like the volume, capacity of the systems, location, and things like that. So staff proposes a condition of approval discussing future water planning and then extension of services. Similarly, there is no city sewer on the property right now, but lines could be extended again from the west and here from the southeast, as well as probably from the south in addition. Sewer system extensions would be required before additional development is authorized. And improvements, again, would be quite extensive. They would include a lift station, force main, gravity sewer mains, etc. Again, the exact types and specifications are planned to be determined through a larger North Reserve Scott Street planning process, as documented again in the proposed conditions of approval. The City of Missoula has an annexation policy, and this policy outlines areas where annexation is intended, or at least is preferred or prioritized. And it's based on lots of different conditions. But in this case, the property is located within annexation area A on the annexation policy map, and that's a good thing. Areas within annexation area A largely meet the guidelines of the annexation policy. And again, these areas should be prioritized for annexation, as the policy states. Further, the property is located within the city's utility service boundary. It can be served by extensions of infrastructure, as I just discussed. It abuts the city limits and can be served by police, fire, and other services. All of these conditions are emphasized in the city's annexation policy. When the application of the petition came in, the regional plan in effect was the 2035 Our Missoula Growth Policy. This growth policy recommends 2 land use designations for the property. In the northwest, light industrial, the main body of the property, heavy industrial. The 2045 land use plan, our Missoula land use plan, which is the growth policy or land use plan currently in effect, also recommends an industrial type land use designation. The place type on this property is industrial and employment. Proposed zoning is M1-2. And so this is a snip from the current 2045 Our Missoula land use plan. You can see circled in red the city comparable zonings to the industrial and employment land use designation are M1 and M2. In this case, M1-2 is proposed by Roseburg and is supported by city staff, and it does comply with the 2045 land use plan. This designation is appropriate for areas of manufacturing, assembly, outdoor storage yards, distribution facilities, and a mix of office, research, logistics, and a wide range of economic activities and employment. Further, the 2045 land use plan, to some degree, it calls out this area. It's one of two areas in the land use plan that are called ongoing planning consideration area. So it recognizes that we don't know exactly at this point what the future is for the Roseburg site. It's an area that's probably transitioning from a heavy industrial use to potentially other uses, but again, we don't know exactly what those uses might be. The land use plan, you can see a quote there before you, but ultimately it says any development should be driven by an updated North Reserve Scott Street master plan, and that master plan is intended to be updated by the Missoula Redevelopment Agency this year. Here's a snip from the 2016 North Reserve Scott Street master plan, where that star is located toward the center. That's the Roseburg property. It was called out as an industrial reserve at that time. So it wasn't within the city limits, of course, and so wasn't really planned quite so closely. But you can see it's a central and important, probably integral part of this North Reserve Scott Street area, has lots of potential to help meet the city's goals. And so it's called out specifically for kind of further considerations. And again, the Missoula Redevelopment Agency intends to update this plan in 2025 and include the property, assuming that it's annexed into the city limits. And so what I want to point out to you, this slide is fairly critical in that to have a property like this come into the city limits, it's 235 acres in size. It's not like it's accompanying a subdivision or a very detailed development plan. At this point, we're kind of mapping out the basics for where streets, trails, utilities might be located. And so what you see here before you are kind of backbone type easements. In blue, these would be 80-foot collector street easements that also could include utilities. And then in red are 30-foot trail easements. There's one point of contention, and that is along the northwest portion near the interstate. You can see circled in green. Staff has recommended in the staff report, or had recommended, I should say, an additional trail easement, and this would ultimately, hopefully, connect with the Grant Creek Trail. Roseburg has pushed back and said, hey, we don't know that we really need that at this point. It encumbers a lot of property. We ask that you actually remove that. So that's opposed. And city staff has kind of gone back, and we've spoken amongst ourselves, and I'm talking about staff from CPDI where I work, also the Public Works and Mobility Department, also Parks and Trails, also MR, the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. We've said, all right, you're right. We can figure this out during a more detailed planning process. So I sent out on Friday a memorandum to you councilors and Mayor Davis recommending that we remove that little spur in the northwest corner pending future consideration, future planning efforts. So that's detailed in memorandum number 1. Back to the annexation itself. So state law provides some specific criteria for annexation, and this is also in the Missoula Municipal Code. So zoning upon annexation must comply with at least one of these 3 criteria before you, and the one that is most applicable in this case is the annexation and rezoning must be consistent with the land use and zoning recommendations for the subject areas as set forth in the growth policy. As you know, we now call a growth policy a land use plan, as I discussed before. The land use plan calls for industrial and employment in this area with an M1 zoning, which is consistent with the zoning recommendations called for in the growth policy. So my point is that the zoning, the proposed zoning complies with the plans that we've recently adopted. Staff recommends 5 conditions of annexation, and they're fairly basic, but we think that they will help. With the property, this is a challenging, this is a bit of a leap of faith, frankly, because this proposal doesn't come with a specific development plan that has been evaluated in great detail, but we know that planning is forthcoming, assuming annexation occurs. But what we need to do is make sure that there are street and utility easements in place that there is a more detailed planning process that comes up to assess sewer, water, stormwater, streets, trails, et cetera, and that there's a funding mechanism in place. And in this case, that's condition number 3, that there's a special improvement district waiver of the right to protest for infrastructure improvements. And then number 4, that there's a retracement survey done so that we know exactly where the pipelines are, exactly where the existing easements are, and the other encumbrances. And finally, due to the Yellowstone pipeline, that there's a no-build zone that's placed along that site. And so that concludes my presentation, with the exception of, I would like to again state that Missoula Redevelopment Agency, Parks and Public Works Mobility, and also representatives of Roseburg are here to discuss the project and answer any questions you may have.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. de Grand Prix. Before we move on to council questions, if I can continue with presentations, or you good? Did you have a question burning? We'll just kind of go through the staff presentations. Okay. So before I turn it over to sponsors or development representatives, if I could have MRA Director Ellen Buchanan come up and just speak briefly to the legislative, pieces of legislation that are potentially impacting our tax increment financing. And I'm sure we might hear from it also from our developers representatives, but as terms of a staff presentation, if you'll go ahead and provide an overview, that'd be great.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Ellen Buchanan, Director of the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. As was stated, there is some pending legislation in Helena right now that would make it extremely difficult for the city to make a decision to either expand an urban renewal district boundary or create any new urban renewal districts. It basically removes the incentives that cities and counties would have to create districts and use tax increment as a tool. We're watching that very closely. There are 2 bills. One is specifically aimed at TIF, and we're not going to know for a while which of these, if either of them, is approved in the legislature. I think it's safe to say that Senate Bill 2 would literally be the death knell for tax increment financing use in the state of Montana, and it's the only economic development tool we really have. So we're watching it very closely. We've testified. We will continue to solicit testimony as to the seriousness of this. But it's obviously, if it passes, we would not be in a position, the city would be hard pressed to amend the urban renewal district boundary in the North Reserve Scott Street district, and Roseburg, of course, would be hard pressed to request annexation. So an opportunity to annex 230 some acres of property into the city limits and participate in how that is redeveloped to meet the city's goals would be lost. I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate that. Why don't we continue on with the project presentation, and then we can turn it over to council for any questions. So developer remarks, come on up.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Alan McCormick, Garlington Lana Robinson, representing Roseburg, and with me tonight is Ellen Porter. I'll turn it over to her in a second. I said this at LUP, and I wanted to reiterate it. I want to thank everybody who has participated to help us get us to this point. It's been a lot of work. Mayor Davis, you and Dale Bickle have participated with us, but it's been a lot more than that. Aaron Payan with planning CDPI. Dave de Grand Prix, we've appreciated working with Dave and his staff report and are in concurrence with it as it's sort of been revised with the trail connection and the like. Aaron Wilson with your transportation folks has been just invaluable in trying to figure out how do we set all of this up for future connections with the transportation network and even potential future interchanges and the like that have impacts and improvements well beyond the redevelopment of this site. Grant, Julie, Nicole, and Christine with MEP have been very, very helpful in sort of facilitating how do we figure this out. This is a unique opportunity, and it's never been done quite this way before. So how do we get everybody at the table to figure out how to do this well? Ellen Buchanan and Annie Gorski have been great to work with MRA and understanding how do you time this thing right to get the tax increment financing piece to work. And Andrew Higemeyer with the county has participated with us all along and sort of kept us apprised of sort of how the county views all of this. And so we wouldn't be here without all that help. And I want to personally acknowledge the benefits that that's provided to all of us, because this really is a unique opportunity. You don't get 200 acres annexed next to the city. And it's this big gray blob that you see on your map right now, but that's because the planning is coming. And there is a real solid opportunity here to help with housing stock, to help with mixed use development here. And so it's going to take a partnership with us and you to try to figure this out. And unfortunately, one of those critical partnership pieces is making the one economic tool that we have work for this. And so if for some reason tax increment financing can't quite work, then it may have to develop differently. And we may, in fact, lose out on some of the opportunities that we've had, or it's going to take much longer to accomplish those. So I think it's very wise. There is a little bit of a quirk in that there's 2 parcels in here that are already developed that may not need to be withheld from or delayed for annexation because they're already sort of developed and may not have the same need for the planning. So I'll let Ellen Porter talk about that more, but I did want to reiterate my sincere thanks to everybody at the city who has helped us forge a partnership so far, and acknowledge that we're going to continue to be partners with you at the table of trying to meet some of the city's goals with this property.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. And Ms. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you so much for your time. Ellen Porter with Roseburg Forest Products. And I'll go back and give you a quick little summary, but I'm going to keep it really short. So as you guys know, Roseburg Forest Products was previously Louisiana Pacific. It's been an operating mill since 1967. Most of the property there is undeveloped, has never been used for anything besides agriculture. And so, we've been very protective of that property for a lot of years, and we've had many people that have wanted to lease a piece, buy a piece. The city has wanted to annex it for many years, and we've just kind of held it really tight, holding it on to a nice complete parcel. And knowing that, sooner or later all mills close down, we envisioned being able to partner with the city, work with the city, and try to make something really nice for the city with that property, as opposed to having it piecemealed out, just kind of mishmash. So we started communicating with Ellen Buchanan a few years ago, knowing that the more mills were shutting down in the area where we got our raw material supply, and the writing was going to be on the wall. And so we've been preparing this for a long time. And forming that partnership that we need to move forward. Unfortunately, at this point, with Senate Bill 2 and maybe some of the other bills that are being introduced on its heels, it's going to definitely impede the partnership that we envisioned. So we are asking for a pause on at least some of the parcels. I'm going to speak to the parcels that are currently undeveloped. We'd like to make sure that we are hitting the pause button. I'm going to amend a little bit the continuation request in that we're not speaking for parcels 8A or 13 in that request. And so, those ones are probably, I would imagine, still on the table if you choose that you want to make a decision tonight. Because those are already developed, it's probably not going to change, and so there may not be any reason to hold those back. And I think the people that are looking to purchase those parcels are going to want to connect to city sewer and city water, and so I'll leave that up to you guys. I won't make a recommendation one way or the other, but I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Porter. You bet. Are there any other members of the development team here that wish to present? Okay, not seeing any then. We'll go ahead and turn this over to questions from council, and folks have their hands raised. We'll start with Councilor Jordan.
Thank you. I think this one's going to be for the developer. I think one of the things that makes Missoula really wonderful is our access to open spaces and the connectivity that we have in Missoula. And I'm really curious about the pushback on the spur trail that would connect things to Grant Creek, because for me that's just ideal. It's a really neat way to kind of make a project useful to a lot of different users. So I'd be curious to hear more about that.
Sure. Happy to answer that question. So in consultation with Parks and in consultation with Dave Grandpré and Aaron Wilson, they realized that although the planning is coming in the future, there's 13 parcels in there. And there was some concern that if for some reason the planning didn't take place, the parcels could be sold off without having proper easements in place. And so the city came to us and said, would you mind dedicating some basic trail and access easements to the property that's sort of a fallback if for some reason the planning didn't take place. And the conversation was very positive. We said, yes, absolutely, because we'd already mapped out where the likely collector road would go through to provide a connection, a crosstown connection up there. And so then in further conversations with them, we figured out what the width of that needs to be so you can get a commuter trail in there along with the connector road. And so there's I want to say it's a 120-foot easement that runs through that property that would provide for both a complete connector road type road as well as a commuter trail that runs along the side of it. But we were all very careful, and I think the city wanted this too. The planning hasn't been done yet, completed yet, so we don't know quite where all of that stuff's going to go. And it's very likely that it's going to move. Some of it might be 10 feet, some of it might be 50 feet or something over here. And we were a little surprised that Parks then wanted this spur trail off of there without sort of more of the planning, because it slices a nice chunk of developable property in half. And so what we asked them to consider is that all of this will get worked out of where the best spot for that spur trail is going to go, and any other trails will get worked out with the update of the Scott Street Master Plan. And so could we take that out for now? Because sometimes crayon drawings, which is what all of this are right now, sometimes crayons become more than crayons in future discussions. And so it was more beneficial, I think, to all of us to just acknowledge that that will all get worked out.
Okay. Yeah, you bet. Go right ahead. One more question for you.
Sorry, real quick, just to make sure, so it's not completely off the horizon. There still is most likely going to be a connectivity trail up to the Grant Creek area. It's just that you don't know exactly where it's going to be. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that's a fair representation, because in reality, we don't know where that Grant Creek Trail is going to come down yet either. And so it may end up coming down more over on Old Grant Creek Road and then over on Howard Razor Drive, which lines up exactly where this easement is going. And so you'll have a full commuter trail all the way through the property. And then, where and how that connects to Grant Creek, I think makes sense for us to all ponder as we figure out, where's a good spot for it to go where it's not compromising future potential development in there. So yeah, there's no attempt here to say you can't connect to the Grant Creek Trail. It's more of just saying we don't know enough of where that's going to go yet.
All right, you bet. Absolutely. Councilor Carlino.
Thanks. This is just for city staff, whoever would want to take it, but despite whether or not this property would qualify to be an urban renewal district, why would we not want to annex it in and get the additional city property taxes?
Mr. DeGrandpré, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Ellen Buchanan, who's in the room here. And then if you'd like to add to that, please do.
Ellen Buchanan, MRA. I think maybe I wasn't clear in the way I talked about the annexation. Should we not extend the urban renewal district? I think that there would be less incentive for Roseburg to request annexation in the event that they can't take advantage of tax increment financing. So it's not a matter of the city saying we wouldn't want to annex you just because we can't bring you into the district. I think Roseburg needs to speak to this if you would like, but there would be a disincentive at that point for annexation on their part.
Anybody else wishing? Mr. DeGrandpré, do you have anything more to add based on what was just presented?
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Only that, it's been the city's practice, in my understanding, to not forcefully annex. Again, as I mentioned at the outset of the presentation, there are several mechanisms for a city to annex property. A city can force annexation under some circumstances, but it's been the city's practice to wait until property owners are petitioning to annex into the city before kind of reaching out and grabbing, so to speak. And in terms of the city's ability to actually, forcefully annex this property, I'd have to go back and look at it a little further and talk with the city attorney's office before providing you with an accurate answer on that.
One more follow-up?
Yeah, I guess just to follow up maybe with the city attorney's office on that, like, do we have the authority to go ahead and just annex it now? And then also, do we have the authority to ensure that trail connection later on, or would that need to be contingent on TIF assistance?
I've not reviewed this for compliance with the other annexation parts. None are immediately apparent. It's not wholly surrounded, I don't think. But I could provide that analysis to you. I would guess, maybe Mr. McCormick can shake his head, but I don't think there are other grounds for annexation at the moment for it. In terms of requiring a trail easement down the road, certainly TIF funding gives us a lever to do that. If they were to come in for subdivision on one or more of the parcels that they own, that could be something that could be discussed there as mitigation for increased traffic or development. So there would be subsequent, if we annex and there was no development that required development review. It's not all types of development do require review. There may not be an opportunity, but that's not my understanding of the way that they're going. They're not looking to put all industrial facilities out there as something that wouldn't require any sort of review. So.
And Ms. Porter, are you good? Okay, great. Good, thank you. Councilor Nugent.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Appreciate the applicants kind of bringing up that not all the parcels are the same as far as the rationale for annexing and not annexing. My understanding is there could be potential sales of some of these parcels in question in the relatively near future. So I guess my question to staff maybe would be, I noticed that one of the conditions talks about not objecting to a future special improvement district. If one or more of these parcels changes hands while we are holding this public hearing open or sending it back to committee, could the new owner object to the annexation, and would that prevent us from annexing those specific parcels?
Well, I can try to address that. Or Ryan, would you like to?
Yeah, I don't think whether they could challenge it is maybe a separate question from whether they would have a good claim if they brought a challenge to the annexation. I would be hard pressed to come up with a colorable claim related to an annexation condition that was agreed to by the owner at the time and that was passed by City Council. And they would need to, there are limits on how long you have to challenge the annexation petition. So it would be something that we would know relatively quickly.
Well, I guess, sorry, to follow up.
Please.
I guess what I'm getting at is if we send this back to committee and wait for the legislature to take action, which could be 90 days or several months, and one or more of these parcels changes hands while we're holding it in committee, so the action hasn't been taken by council yet.
Right. Okay, so what you're saying is could they withdraw their petition to
could
annex?
those new owners of those parcels withdraw them?
So it would depend, I think, on how many pulled their, or attempted to pull their petition. If there were less, if the total number of property owners or the amount of acreage was more than 50% of the property that we were looking to annex, we would probably be looking at some problems there. But if it was one parcel that made up less than 50% of the total acreage, then I don't think that there would be grounds to grind us to a halt or cause problems with the annexation. They would have standing because they were within the boundary of the area annex to subsequently challenge the annexation, but they again wouldn't have a very good claim related to it so long as that we followed all the required procedural elements.
One more
Please.
question. If after the kind of conversation, discussion, we did want to follow the potential suggestion of the applicant to potentially annex the two parcels that were referenced, I think it was 8A and 13, but then send everything back to committee, is that a legal action we could take tonight, or is this an all or nothing sort of proposition?
If the petition is for all of them and you voted on two of them, I think that would be an action, and I would probably advise, and I think maybe Dave could speak to this issue too, re-advertising a new public hearing for, an amended petition with, the same parcels as originally petitioned for, minus the two that were already voted on. But I don't think you could bifurcate the petition and vote on two of them now and wait. That would cause me concern.
Thanks.
You bet. And before I move on to the next council member, is there anything that you wish to add, Mr. de Grand Prix?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilor Becerra?
Thank you. I guess first of all, I just want to say that I appreciate where we are right now with this property. I think it holds a lot of potential for Missoula and for all of us to reach some of the goals that we have in the growth policy and just the need of the community. And so it's very exciting. I guess my question is, I understand that we shouldn't encumber this property by conditioning specific right-of-way and easements, but I am wondering if it would be possible to amend the language that's included in that finding of fact to, in very general terms, mention the connections that we want to make. So, for example, we could say to later on connect to Grand Creek Trail, to connect to the north side and to the heart of Missoula neighborhoods, just to as a placeholder, not necessarily identifying a specific location within the property where that easement should go, but just to kind of get some sort of further reassurance that we're gonna have those connections at some point. So I would ask that we consider adding language that at least mentions those three important connection points that this property would be providing. So I guess my question's both for the applicant and for Dave.
Ellen McCormick again. I think what you're asking for is a policy statement in a way of saying that here's the easements we want you to go ahead and dedicate, and as a policy we want to make sure everybody knows we want to make these connections. I want to reiterate that the 120-foot easement, which is 80 feet of right-of-way for streets and then 40 feet for a commuter trail, provides you both. It crosses the entire parcel. It goes from east to west. And so you'll have everything there to make the connection. That just kind of makes there's nothing about what we're proposing that says you can't connect to Grant Creek. And in fact, we're providing you already with a 40-foot wide commuter trail that can connect Grant Creek. It's just, we don't know where you're going to put it yet. And it could come down in that northeast corner by Brett's. It could come down Howard Razor. It could come down some other stretch. You might get a wild hair and put it across the north side of the interstate and bring it across. Who knows? But that's all we're saying. So if you want to put a policy statement into the findings or something that says, hey, just make sure that we want to be, as we're doing future planning, we want to make sure we make a connection to the Grant Creek Trail. I don't see an issue with that because we're already providing it.
You bet.
I think that the way I'm reading this new number 9 finding of fact for a conclusion of law, it reads a little bit like both. It's not very specific and it's not very policy statement-like. It says that Parks and Recreation Department staff generally supports the location. So to me, that's very open to whatever we see coming our way in the future via these planning processes. So adding just the naming the specific trails that we're trying to connect would kind of is in line with that language. So I think that the community might feel better knowing that we're looking at those specific locations. So that would be my request, and if possible, I would really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Any other developer response to that, or good to go? Yeah, please come on up.
Alan McCormick again. I think we're all, the reason it was easy for us to agree to the condition to put the road and the trail across is that's something we've been representing since 5 years ago, talking with Ellen Buchanan about this, is how do we make these connections occur? And the only concern that we've had with all of it has been, let's not set them in stone until we do the update of the master plan and figure out where the best idea is to put things. So I think I'm saying the same thing as you are, Ms. Becerra, and in saying, yep, we want to make connections, and that if we want to name them as the Grant Creek and whatever's over on the north side, I don't think it matters. I think that's a good thing.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. When we get to that point in the public hearing, we can talk a little bit about how we would address that. Yes, Mr. Sudbury.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up because that Mr. McCormick's point reminded me when we were working with Roseburg on these conditions and the trail easement and the road right-of-way easement, there was this understanding that it's not, that whole thing's not set in stone. So if the Grant Creek Trail connection comes in at a different location, we have the ability to relocate that 40-foot trail easement to connect to it. It's not necessarily going to follow the road the whole way along, because presumably we would have a complete street built. There would be bike and pedestrian facilities along the street already. The trail is intended to connect to wherever the eventual trail comes through at. So I think the existing condition provides for that. If the master plan has the Grant Creek Trail coming down at a different location, then we have the ability to move that shared use paths to connect to it. That was the intent when we originally negotiated anyway.
Yeah, please.
I understand, and I'm not saying that the language that we have right now is not going to fulfill that need. That's not at all what I'm getting at. I just think no matter where that connection happens, I just want to make sure that we are stating what we're connecting to. So if possible, I would like to see that there, but I understand if it complicates things more than they already are, then let's not.
Thank you. And from a procedural perspective, Mr. Sudbury, I'm assuming that would be an amendment to the motion that gets proposed this evening?
That could happen tonight, but because we're not voting on it tonight, it could happen whenever it comes back, or in something we could discuss in the committee to work with language and then have it come back for a final decision whenever this comes back.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. Is that what you would anticipate? Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much. And Councillor Jones.
Thanks. I have a question, but first I just wanted to say thank you to Roseburg for being so community-oriented with all of this process and really looking at what the community needs as you were figuring out the next steps for this property. So thank you very much for that. And it is very frustrating having this SB number 2 bill out there when we desperately need housing. The legislature knows it, the governor knows it, and then there are bills like this which would really diminish the one tool we have to facilitate infrastructure and housing. So I'm hopeful that calmer minds prevail at the legislature, but we will see on that. My question, I think, is for Ellen. I was just wanting to understand a little bit better. We have this entire, several hundred acres denoted as industrial under the zoning, and that's what our land land use plan really is focused at this point. And so the North Reserve Scott Street master plan needs to be, if ultimately this goes through, needs to be revised. And then there would be a rezone based on that in terms of sequencing all of the steps taken to get this to the starting gate. I just wasn't clear on what entity will steer that process of revising that master plan and what is the time frame on that, because that is a huge building block that has to be done to then sequence the other items.
Sure. Ellen Buchanan, Missoula Redevelopment Agency. What we've worked out through cooperation with CPDI, Parks, Public Works Mobility, MRA, the owners of the property, is that, I mean, we understand that we need to revisit the master plan. Things have changed radically since we did that master plan. There was an assumption that Roseburg would continue as a wood products operation forever. And so that was basically left alone during the development of the North Reserve Scott Street master plan after it became an urban renewal district. So what we kind of struggled back and forth with the help of MEP and some other folks, and as to how to handle this timing-wise, because you got two efforts that could easily run concurrently, and that is the reconsideration of the North Reserve Scott Street master plan at the same time that the code reform regulations are being written. We, in the CPDI, very intentionally left that piece of property as industrial, with the understanding, and with an asterisk, which basically says it's undergoing continued planning, with the understanding that once that master plan is revised and adopted by the city council, that will guide revision of the land use plan and the zoning of the property. So it's a pretty well thought out plan that was on track and working fine until 2 weeks ago.
Thank you for that. And so, assuming at some point this annexation goes through and MRA is intact, what's the time frame? Do you have a time frame estimate on to do that master planning process to then have that building block? What do you think that entails? Is that 6 months or 12 months or 2 years or?
No, it's not as long as 2 years. We've been debating that in the office because I mean, we believe that whether the property is annexed into the city and becomes part of the urban renewal district or not, it needs to be planned for, because there's no longer going to be a wood products operation that needs that kind of acreage. So it's going to develop. And if we can help with Roseburg's participation and the other neighboring properties out there, develop kind of a roadmap for how that's going to develop, whether it's in the city or in the county, I think we need to do that. So we're going to probably move forward with the master plan revision. We're not going to wait to see what might transpire in the legislature, because we need to do that anyway. So we're kind of poised to go ahead and put out an RFP in the coming weeks or month or so to bring a team on board to help us go through that effort. And we'll have the plan done, and if legislation is such that the annexation goes forward, then we'll go ahead and start the process of incorporating that property into the urban renewal district with a boundary amendment if council chooses to do that.
All right, you bet. There are 3 hands raised, but I believe just one new hand raised, if that's Councilor Nugent, because Councilor Becerra, I think you had your question answered, yeah? But Councilor Nugent, new question?
Ms. Buchanan actually answered it. I'm impressed you knew that my hand was raised, because it keeps putting it down when I put it up. I thought maybe you were all telling me something. I don't know.
Caught my attention. Okay, great. Your question was answered. Any other council questions before we open up the public hearing? All right. Not seeing any then, that wraps up our questions from council. So we will make the main motion. Land Use and Plan Chair, Councilor Nugent, will make that. And I appreciate you being able to modify what is published on the agenda in order to indicate that it's being sent back to committee. I'm assuming that your motion will include that, or? No, that'll be the vote. I mean,
Well, can I just, without objection, ask for this to be sent back to committee? So we don't need to put the motion on the floor then? All right, then he's shaking his head no, so.
You can ask for it to be sent to committee with unanimous consent, whether you put the motion on the floor and then send it to committee or not.
And sorry, quick follow-up. Does putting the motion on the floor not impact our ability to potentially modify it in committee when we do eventually hear it again?
It's going to come back. I'm not overly concerned about that formality. If you make the motion now, you can amend it, and then you'll have to let everybody know what you've amended when it comes back on a Monday meeting. If you don't, then you can obviously amend the motion before it's made. So I think either way is fine.
So I guess without objection, I would ask that this be returned to land use and planning.
okay, excellent. So any objection from any council members that this get returned to the Land Use and Planning Committee? Councillor Carlino?
Yeah, I object. I'd prefer that. I mean, in my opinion, I think whether or not they can get TIF assistance, it would still be beneficial to city taxpayers and the city as a whole to have this annexed in. I mean, they have to go through, city roads and city streets, and it seems like fine to me to annex it in. And then we could still just do the vote to send it back to committee. But I object to just unanimously doing it.
Okay. So there has been an objection, so we will hear a motion.
Nope, we just vote on that.
Vote on.
Rules, yeah, so.
Vote on sending it back to committee?
Yeah, so I think our rules now say simple majority.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. So we are opening up the public hearing, however, so we do want to hear from public comment. And so we'll do that first, then we'll hear any parliamentary debate, and then we'll take a vote. So we will now open up the public hearing and open up the opportunity for the public to make comment on this agenda item. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please say your name for the record. So any public comment on this agenda item? Any in the room? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Is there any online? I'm not seeing any. Okay. Give it another second here for any members of the public. Okay. All right, not seeing any public comment, then we'll go ahead and wrap up the public hearing. We'll bring it back to council discussion. And so are there any questions or comments from council at this time? Councillor Anderson, I saw your hand come up. I don't know if you have something you wanted to add?
No, Madam Mayor, sorry, it just popped up. The technology gremlins are real.
Yeah, we are having some technology gremlins. Thanks everybody for rolling with it. I appreciate it. The old standard. All right, old school. Councillor Nugent.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. Yeah, I'm going to just start raising my hand. I generally agree with Mr. Carlino that properties that are benefited by city services should be annexed. I don't agree with the statement that was made earlier that the city should only annex when people request it. That being said, this annexation process came about because the property owners requested it, and they've asked us to hold it for a little while. So that's why I'm very comfortable sending it back to committee, because I think we just take each circumstance case by case. But I generally agree with the sentiment you're making. So.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nugent. And Councillor Becerra?
I am going to support sending it back to committee. I think that this is, I'm seeing this very much as a partnership between the city and Roseburg. And if they're asking us to hold off on moving this forward, then I think it's part of that relationship. So I'll be supporting sending it back to committee.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comments this evening? Okay, not seeing any. Not seeing any online. Then I do believe that wraps up the council discussion, parliamentary debate, and we are ready for a vote. And the vote is, Councillor Nugent, to send this back to committee, correct?
Yes, so I believe a yes vote would be to send it back to committee, and a no vote would be to hold it on the floor tonight.
Okay, excellent. Great. All right, a motion has been made, and so Ms. Trimble will take a roll call vote when you're ready.
Right. A vote to send this item back to committee, beginning with Anderson,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Arlino,
No.
Farmer,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
and Vasika.
Yes.
And that motion passes and will return to committee without a term date pending the outcome of the legislature.
Okay, thank you very much. So this item will be returned to committee. I want to thank staff members for the thorough presentation, as well as representatives from the development team and owner of the property. Thank you for coming in and providing a conversation on a very unique project for Missoula. We're looking forward to the ongoing conversation, and thank you for your partnership as we work through this together. Appreciate it. Absolutely, you bet. Okay. That does wrap up item 5.1. So we'll move on to our next public hearing, which is item 5.2, and it's the annexation of 2812 and 2816 South 3rd Street West. And we do have two members of our planning team listed on the agenda. We have both Charlie Ream and Cassie Trepard. So I'm sure between the two of you, you've worked out who's going to start the presentation here. I will hand it over to you.
Oops. There we go. All right. Thank you, everyone. My name is Charlie Ream. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm an associate planner with the current planning division. Development Services has received a request from Jamie Erbacher of WGM Group, representing 3rd Street Partners LLC, to annex a property addressed as 2812 and 2816 South 3rd Street West. The property is proposed to be zoned upon annexation to B1-1 neighborhood business. Montana Code Annotated Title 7, Chapter 2 provides several ways to add land to municipalities. City Council has authority over all additions and may impose conditions. A public hearing is required. The subject property is located at 2812 and 2816 South 3rd Street West, just 3 blocks west of the intersection of South 3rd Street West and Reserve Street. This is a vicinity map showing the location of the proposed annexation with respect to city limits. The parcel is on South 3rd Street West, which is within city limits. City zoning districts are shown in color on the screen. A few parcels on blocks to both the east and west are within city limits. The parcel is walkable to Hawthorne Elementary School and Mountain Line Route 9. Surrounding land uses include detached residences to the north, south, east, and west. This is the current plat. Lot B is approximately 0.46 acres, which is approximately 20,115 square feet. The lot currently has 2 detached structures. The adjacent right-of-way is required to be annexed under state law, and South 3rd Street West is already within city limits. Currently in the county, the property is zoned Citizen Initiated Zoning District Number 13, or CZD 13. CZD 13 was established in 1959 and was last amended in 2007. The purpose of this district is to maintain the rural character of the area. As such, maintaining the prescribed density and limiting dense developments are the highest priorities of the CZD 13 district. CZD 13 does not allow any commercial or industrial uses and has a maximum density of 2 dwelling units per acre. The subject property is 0.46 acres and contains 2 dwelling units. Therefore, it is already non-conforming to the maximum density allowed by CZD 13. Parcels to the south and east are designated in the county as residential medium. City staff support annexation because this parcel substantially complies with the 2019 city annexation policy. The annexation policy prioritizes annexations that contribute to the logical growth pattern of the city and fill in gaps created by previous annexations. The parcel is adjacent to South 3rd Street West, which is within city limits. Though none of the abutting parcels are within city limits, there are areas to both the east and west within city limits. Currently, there are no right-of-way improvements planned for this portion of South 3rd Street West. However, this is a scenario where the right-of-way is under city jurisdiction, but the abutting lots are not. Annexing parcels along South 3rd Street West in this location can create more opportunities for installation of street improvements that meet city standards in the future. The parcel is already served by city water and sewer, which run adjacent to the property. I will cover the annexation policy map and growth policy compliance on the following slides. Here is the annexation area map. The adopted 2019 annexation policy recommends annexing parcels within the high priority annexation area A. The subject parcel is located within annexation area B, which is for areas that typically do not meet the guidelines of the annexation policy. However, the two area designations A and B are not intended to indicate where annexation will or will not be approved. The annexation policy map is meant to show areas that have factors that generally tend to meet annexation policy guidelines for potential annexation. The annexation policy states that all annexations should be evaluated on their individual merits based on the criteria in the annexation policy. The subject parcel's designation of Area B may be because the parcel is in an area of known high groundwater. However, city staff from Public Works and Mobility provided information which indicates that the high groundwater depth at this parcel is 17 feet below ground surface, which is greater than the 14-foot minimum required for standard stormwater sumps. On the current and draft floodplain maps, this property is not within the floodplain. When the Missoula 2045 land use plan was adopted, there were development projects already in progress. For these projects, we are using the growth policy, which was in place at the time the application was deemed complete. This proposed annexation had been submitted with a complete application before the new land use plan was adopted. Therefore, the applicable regional plan is the Missoula 2035 growth policy, which recommends a land use designation of neighborhood mixed use. The city annexation policy states that any annexation should be guided by the city growth policy. Neighborhood mixed use is intended to distinguish, create, and maintain and enhance areas that already provide primarily local service within a neighborhood. These areas support and help give identity to individual or small groupings of neighborhoods by providing a visible and distinctive focal point. Commercial uses that may be a part of the neighborhood mixed use include retail, offices, entertainment, professional services, eating and drinking, and shopfront retail that serve a market at a small neighborhood scale. Medium high density residential development is also encouraged in this area. The neighborhood mixed-use land designation also supports high-density development. Relatable zoning districts include the B1-1, B2-1, B2-2, and M1R-2 zoning districts. The proposed B1-1 zoning district is a current relatable zoning district. In terms of permitted uses, the B1-1 zoning district is the least intensive of all of the current relatable zoning districts. As a note, the zoning would also comply with the new land use plan, which shows urban mixed use low place type for this parcel. The city zoning district B1-1 neighborhood business allows residential development at a density of 1 unit per 1,000 square feet, or about 44 dwelling units per acre. The county zoning designation, CZD 13, allows 2 units per acre. On this property, the B1-1 zoning district would allow up to 20 units. The county zoning designation of CZD 13 has a maximum building height of 30 feet and setbacks of 25 feet from the front and rear property lines and 15 feet from the side property lines. The city zoning designation of B1-1 has a maximum building height of 40 feet and the front setback is 25 feet. The rear setback is 25% of the parcel depth, or a maximum of 20 feet, and the side setback is 15 feet, same as the adjacent CZD 13 zoning district. The county zoning designation of CZD 13 and the city zoning designation of B1-1 both permit detached houses. However, the B1-1 zoning district allows all residential building types, including townhouses, duplexes, multi-dwelling buildings, mixed-use buildings, and group living facilities. CZD 13 allows agriculture, churches, libraries, parks, and schools. B1-1 allows a variety of civic and commercial uses, including daycares, restaurants, personal improvement services, and professional offices. Municipal Zoning Code Title 20, Section 208540I2 outlines 3 review criteria taken from state law which may be considered for zoning upon annexation. Zoning upon annexation must comply with at least one of the criteria. Given the petitioner's proposal to zone the property B1-1 upon annexation, the annexation meets criteria 2C, which authorizes land uses consistent with the land use and zoning recommendations for the subject areas as set forth in the Our Missoula 2035 growth policy. The permitted land uses, form, and density in the proposed B1-1 neighborhood business are compatible with the land use designation of neighborhood mixed use. There was some agency comment on this proposal, but none of note, and there was one public comment included with the staff report, which opposed the annexation, expressing concerns for traffic and any future multifamily development on the parcel. With approval, staff is recommending 2 conditions be included, which come from our Public Works and Mobility and Engineering departments. The applicant shall install right-of-way improvements to South 3rd Street West, including but not limited to sidewalk, boulevard, curb, and gutter at the time of new development, subject to review and approval by Public Works and Mobility. And the second, the applicant shall dedicate a 10-foot right-of-way easement along the entire length of the subject property frontage adjacent to South 3rd Street West within 90 days of annexation approval, subject to review and approval by Public Works and Mobility. With the 2 conditions of approval, staff recommend that City Council adopt a resolution to annex this property. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant should be present in case they would like to comment or council would like to ask them questions directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Anybody here with the applicant or the sponsor for additional presentation?
Yes, Mayor Davis, I'm online. This is Jamie Erbacher with WGM Group. Thank you, Charlie, for the staff report. I think I would just like to address the one public comment that was in opposition. With regards to future development on this, we are not intending to do any future development. We are actually intending to file a townhome exemption development. So that is an exemption from subdivision review, which would create home ownership and allow these homes to actually be owned by individuals with a homeowners association similar to like a condo declaration. And so future development of this parcel into multifamily is not the intent of the current landowner. I am available if there are any additional questions from other council members.
Excellent, Jamie, thank you very much. And we have Councilor Jordan, question.
Thank you. This is for the developer or the representative, actually probably for a planner. I apologize. I can't remember if you spoke about water and sewer access. I was looking a few things up while you're speaking. Will any potential developments on this property be on city sewer and water?
Yes, they applied this summer and received permission to connect to city sewer and water. I believe Troy Monroe is here and he could comment to further development, but they already have sewer and water from the city.
Please, you bet.
Thank you. Another thing I just want to make sure I understand, you said the water table's pretty high there, but it's at 17 feet, which means that the 14-foot requirement for essentially a dry well is legal in this area. Is that correct? Did I hear that properly?
Yes, I believe so.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. You bet. Any other council questions? Not seeing any? Not seeing any online? All right. So if there's no more questions from council, then we'll go ahead and hear the main motion. Councilor Nugent.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I move City Council adopt a resolution to annex and incorporate within the boundaries of the City of Missoula a parcel of land described as Lot B of Floral Edition, located in Lot 2, Coben and Dinsmore's Orchard Homes Edition Number 1, Section 19, Township 13 North, Range 19 West, PMM, Missoula County, Montana, and Zone Lot B, B1-1 Neighborhood Business, subject to conditions of annexation approval based on the findings of fact in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Motion's on the floor. This opens up the public hearing, and we invite public comment on this agenda item. So any members of the public in the room that wish to make public comment tonight? I'm not seeing any in the room here. How about online? I'm not seeing any public online that wishes to make comment on this agenda item. Give it another second here. Okay, that wraps up our public comment and the public hearing, and we'll bring it back for council discussion. Any other questions or comments this evening? No, I'm not seeing any. Okay, then we can go ahead and do a roll call vote on this agenda item. Ms. Trimble.
Great. The vote on the annexation of 2812 and 2816 South 3rd Street West, beginning with Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Merlino?
Yes.
Farmer?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Nugent?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Zika?
Yes.
And Anderson?
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. That wraps up item 5.2. Thanks to the staff and members from the development team for being here this evening. And that wraps up our public hearings for the evening. We don't have any new business, and so our next item of business is the consent agenda. I'll ask City Clerk Claire Trimble to post it on the screen so folks can see it, read the agenda items out loud. We'll then take public comment. I know I have at least one item requested for separation, and I'll ask other council members at that time if you wish to separate any items. Okay, Ms. Trimble, we're ready.
Great. On this evening's consent agenda, we have a motion to ratify accounts payable or checks for claims dated January 21st, 2025 in the amount of $1,256,234.91. We have a second batch of claims which includes a motion to approve accounts payable dated January 28th, 2025 in the amount of $3,375,958.32. We have a recommended motion to adopt a resolution increasing the annual allocation of the neighborhood project fund grants from $20,000 to up to $35,000. We have a motion to award the bid for South Russell Street Crossing right-of-way improvements project in the sum of $249,942 and to authorize the return of bid bonds. We have a motion awarding the bid for South 4th Street Phase 2 Water Main Replacement Project to Midi Excavating, Inc. doing business as Western Excavating at a cost not to exceed $1,218,008 to authorize the return of bid bonds. We have a motion awarding the bid for South 13th Street Water Main Replacement Project to Midi Excavating, doing business as Western Excavating, at a cost not to exceed $339,315 and authorize the return of bid bonds. We have a motion to award the bid for Dickinson's McCormick Water Main Replacement Project to Three Rivers Landworks at a cost not to exceed $1,061,963.60 and to authorize the return of bid bonds. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with DJ&A for the preliminary engineering services at a cost not to exceed $248,757 for the downtown safety access and mobility project. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a resolution to support the intent of and project contained in the 2025 Mullen Reyes Grant Project application. We have a motion appointing Tyler Hofer, Tori Anderson, Graham Cobb as regular members to the Open Space Advisory Committee with a full term to begin January 26, 2025 and run through January 25, 2028. And we have a motion appointing John Rouse as a regular member of the Open Space Advisory Committee with a partial term that begins immediately and runs through January 25, 2026. We have a motion accepting the ownership of 0.55 acres from the Resurrection Cemetery Association, RCA, at the corner of Otis and Shakespeare Street and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents to execute the purchase. We have a motion promoting Matthew Sanford from an alternate member to a regular position on the Historic Preservation Commission with a term that begins immediately and ends December 31st, 2026. We have another motion appointing Eden Streckle to an alternate member position with a term beginning immediately and ending December 31st, 2025. And last but not least, we have a first reading and preliminary adoption to set a public hearing on February 10th, 2025 and preliminarily adopt an ordinance to rezone the subject property located at 2130-2136 Eaton Street and 2252-2258 West Central Avenue and legally described as lots 19 through 21 in block 18 of the Plain Edition subdivision located in section 29, township 13 North, range 19 West, PMM from RM 2.7 residential multi-dwelling to RM 1-35 residential multi-dwelling and refer this item to the Land Use and Planning Committee for presentation and discussion on February 5th.
Thank you very much, Ms. Trimble. It was a longer list than usual tonight without having a meeting last Monday. Before bringing it back to council questions or asking if anybody wants to separate, we'll hear public comment first. And so members of the public that are here and wish to make comment on the consent agenda, come on up now.
Hello again. I'll be brief. Again, Jennifer Worrell, W-O-R-R-E-L-L, in Ward 6. And I just wanted to thank Councilman Carlino for putting forth the increase in the neighborhood grant allotment. And I just wanted to give my support for that. So, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your comment. All right. Any other members of the public want to make public comment on the consent agenda? Any items on the consent agenda? Okay, not seeing any in the room and just checking online here briefly to see if there's any members of the public online that wish to make comment on the consent agenda. Okay, I'm not seeing any, and so I'll bring it back to council. I have a couple of hands raised here, and I know I did get notification from Councillor Campbell via email. I'll certainly start with those that have their hands raised. Councillor Becerra.
Yes, I would like to abstain from voting on item 8.8. I don't know if that requires separating it. It's a downtown safety access and mobility professional services agreement with DJ&A for a contract. I'm employed by DJ&A, so I would like to abstain from voting.
Okay, thank you. And
yeah.
I do know that...
Or recuse is the correct term, I think, from voting.
Councillor Campbell wishes to separate this item, so it will be a separate vote.
Okay, then no problem.
That makes it easy. I was just thinking, I probably should have had Councillor Campbell go first. And so why don't we do that, and then Councillor Jones will come back? Is that all right? You're going to separate something as well? Okay. While we're on this topic.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so item 8.8, as I mentioned in committee, last we discussed this, I have concerns that the needs of the downtown business community aren't being met with this project. Many, if not most, downtown businesses back in 2023 made it abundantly clear that this is something that they're not interested in, and we don't need we had a Broadway diet that's of limited use, I would say, and now we're talking about a Higgins Avenue diet of the same nature, 3-lane plan to include turning our $17 million Bear Tracks Bridge from 4 lanes down to 3 lanes. Not a great use of taxpayer money. I had a chance to attend a public forum at the Wilma in 2023 when these concerns were brought forth. And I was very let down by the options that were availed to the business community at that meeting. Every rendition that they had presented, that staff had presented in that meeting had some version of a 3-lane Higgins Avenue plan. And in fact, as I review the SAM working group minutes, I find minutes from June 18th of 2024, where it was asked the previous month from the working group members, which I believe were grossly underrepresented by the business community downtown, if I may add. One of their concerns was what's baked into this plan. And in June, staff put out a list of several things, 2 of them being the fact of the improvements to the Higgins Avenue multimodal plan, which is the 3 lanes I just mentioned, as well as the reversion of Front Street and Main Street to the 2-way restoration each way. Also, that garnered quite a bit of apprehension from the business community. And, you know, with those things baked into the plan, I appreciate that there is a working group out there. I don't think it's well represented by the business community at large downtown. I believe without a thriving economic footprint and viable business community downtown, there's nothing to safely access or mobilize to. So, you know, as I've said for quite some time now, I feel it's council responsibility. Certainly, I feel it's my responsibility to make sure that we do no harm to the business community at large. And I feel this does that. So once again, I personally choose to support our business community, particularly downtown businesses here in Missoula. And as such, I will be voting no on this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Campbell. So item 8.8 is separated, and so I'll move to Councillor Jones.
I was just going to separate out 8.3 neighborhood grants projects, and I can speak to that briefly.
Please.
Sure. I think it would be great to have more money in the pot for neighborhood grants. I'm just very uncomfortable expanding our budget when we're probably heading into budget cuts this summer. So I'd much rather have this discussion within the context of our budget. When we are looking at cutting boards and commissions and trying to narrow those down and recoup some costs there, it's hard for me to be voting yes on something that expands our budget, especially when staff stated that depending on the project, they could work with the neighborhoods to get some of these projects done, so we didn't really need to expand this budget. So I'll be voting no on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Are there any other items wishing to be separated? Councillor Nugent? Okay, all right. All right, then if no other items wish to be separated, what we'll do is we'll move forward with the balance of the consent agenda. And Ms. Trimble, I'll ask you to do a voice vote on that, but our 2 separated items, if we can do a roll call vote on those, please. And did you want to make comment prior to vote, Councillor Nugent? Sorry, Ms. Trimble, departure from my fact. On either of the separated items, do you wish to make comment?
If that's allowable.
It is allowable. Why don't you go right ahead?
Yep. I would just, first of all, and I spoke to Mr. Carlino about this. I do appreciate him bringing this forward. And in the conversation, I definitely have illustrated that if there are more projects that we feel like meet the threshold, that the staff can work with the applicants, and we have the ability to do that. I agree that I do not want to expand our budget in any way outside of that budget conversation, because I think it's going to be a tough year. So I do support the neighborhood grants program, but I will be supporting Ms. Jones' desire to pull that off, and I'll be voting no. Mr. Campbell, I appreciate the comments you're making. We've been talking about this on council since before I got elected. So it's one of those things where, we come in midstream and we have these conversations. And all the points you're making are ones I've definitely heard from people. This topic, and Mayor Davis can probably speak to this as well. This came up a lot during our campaign, quite a bit actually. And I would say that I heard from business members on every side of this. So I don't think it's accurate to necessarily paint it as one broad brush. And I definitely take umbrage to the statement that if people support this project, they don't support business. I actually operate a business that has an address on Higgins Avenue, and I don't think it's quite that simple. I don't like the idea of going to 3 lanes, but I think that there are some intersections that need to be addressed, and this project's also working to do those as well. Broadway and Higgins is one where if you are trying to turn right and people are crossing, you back up and it backs up traffic. I've talked about it on the council floor several times that I want to see the final designs to see that issue is addressed. Same thing at the intersection of, what is it that goes towards campus, 6th Street? And right in front of Hellgate, where again, if people are using that crosswalk, then there's 2 lanes trying to go straight. That stretch would actually be better served with a dedicated right turn lane and a straight through lane. So there are things about this that I think the design process can really make better, and those are trade-offs. But I've said on the floor that I want to see those designs, and I think that's going to be important to the whole project. And I do know of at least 2 business people that I could think of who were critical of this, but then were invited to be part of the downtown SAM, or the SAM implementation, whatever the correct name for that is. So I do want to make sure that people understand that there is a very large effort underway to try and incorporate as much of that feedback as they can into this project. And I'm anxious to see what those final designs look like.
Thank you, Councilor Nugent. Councilor Jordan.
Thank you. I just wanted to throw my support at my colleague, Mr. Carlino, for bringing forward the neighborhood grant program recommendation. I find it ironic that we are saying we don't have the money to fund this program when it has actually got more robust built-in success metrics than any of the funding in our entire general fund. So I think if we're worried about misspending public dollars, then we should think about getting metrics on our entire general fund and all of the programs within our general fund, and allow our neighborhoods to have more money to spend on projects that neighborhoods actually really want. I know Franklin of the Fort has done some amazing work with neighborhood grant funding, and they have wanted more for other projects, but if we're worried about cost savings, this is not the place to do it. The place to do it is through performance metrics in our general fund. And additionally, we see amendments to our budget all year long. So we definitely approve budget amendments throughout the year. And so it is not out of spec to do a budget amendment outside of our budgeting process. And I just want to make sure that if there's anybody still listening, that they understand kind of some of the stuff that is happening behind the scenes, that adding extra money to this program is not going to break the bank, but other projects do break the bank, and we don't worry about those.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. And Councilor Carlino.
Yeah, just to speak to the neighborhood grants and just the process of this vote, it would have been helpful to not add it to the consent agenda. 10 of us agreed on Wednesday to add this to consent agenda, and then to pull it off now is pretty confusing. Otherwise, we would have had city staff here to speak to it like they were here on Wednesday and to answer questions about this. But I do appreciate the majority of city council passing this resolution, and think it's a big bang for a buck. It's a small dollar amount that goes a long way to empowering neighborhood councils and creating real tangible change in our neighborhoods that people can really see and feel. It's a really small amount of money. So if we're really concerned about being conservative in the budget, I think we can find many other things that would make a much bigger dent. But as long as votes don't change, it should still pass today. And then lastly, I just want to say that every neighborhood council in Ward 3 at least has reached out to me and supported this as well, like at least members of the neighborhood council like we heard today. So I think, it's a strong program, and let's expand it so we can keep seeing it be fruitful. But it would have been nice to not put it onto the consent agenda, just to take it off, which is confusing to city staff that would have been here and to other people that might have wanted to comment.
Thank you, Councillor Carlino. And Councillor Melson.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. Just a quick note to disclose my professional relationship with DJNA and my intent to abstain from the vote on 8.8. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Sherrill.
I just thought I would weigh in, as I did at the committee meeting, that on the neighborhood grants program, the language is up to 35,000. It doesn't designate 35,000. It is a small change. I'm going to be voting for it. I think it's a great program. I also, as I indicated last Wednesday, I think it's going to be a really tough budget year, and I don't know if this is the year that we're going to do $35,000. But I think it's a great program, and I'm okay with the up to language.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Councillor Sherrill. I do believe that is all comments from council members on the separated consent agenda items. All right. So with that, then we'll go ahead and do a voice vote on the balance of the consent agenda and count. Ms. Trimble, if you'll reiterate for the voice vote which items those are, and I'll just state that 8.3 and 8.8 are the two items that have been separated.
Yes. So voting on everything except for 8.3 and 8.8. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to item 8.3, and we'll do a roll call vote.
One second for the computer to catch up.
No problem.
Right, voting on item 8.3, which is the resolution increasing the annual allocation of neighborhood grants, neighborhood project fund grants from 20,000 to up to 35,000, beginning with Campbell.
Yes.
Carlino.
Yes.
Farmer.
Yes.
Jones.
No.
Jordan.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Nugent.
No.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Masika.
No.
Anderson.
No.
And Becerra.
Yes.
And that passes with 8 in favor, 4 opposed.
Okay, thank you very much. When you're ready, we'll go ahead and take that vote on 8.8.
Right. Voting on item 8.8 to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with DJNA for the preliminary engineering services related to the downtown safety, access, and mobility project, beginning with Carlino.
Yes.
Farmer.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Nelson.
Abstain.
Nugent.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Masika.
No.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Abstain.
Campbell.
No.
That item passes with 2 in favor, 2 opposed, and 2 abstentions.
8 in favor, 2 opposed, and 2 abstentions? Is that
Yes.
right? Excellent. Thank you. All righty. That gets us through our consent agenda. Thank you very much. And like I mentioned at the beginning, we don't have any items for regular business. That is agenda item number 9. So that does bring us to our state legislature updates. We have Jessica Miller here tonight to be able to provide an overview. Jessica, when you're ready.
Good evening, Jessica Miller with Central Services. So to highlight a few bills this week, and again, our entire bill tracking list is available on our website. And these are just some of the highlights of things that are moving last week and this week. So one bill that we supported was Senate Bill 1, which creates new definitions of blight for our redevelopment agencies. That one passed out of the Senate unanimously and will now be going to the House. I just kind of wanted to highlight that one because the Montana League of Cities and Towns and our staff, everybody was able to really kind of work with the sponsor on this and come out with a great bill that everybody was able to support, and obviously the unanimous vote reflects that, so I wanted to highlight that. House Bill 274, so last week was a big week for some of the Medicaid items, which help us achieve some of our goals in the behavioral health realm. So House Bill 274 provides coverage for medical respite for Medicaid eligible homeless people. That one will have a hearing this week, and we are supporting that one. House Bill 230, generally revising Medicaid laws, had a hearing last week. There was a lot of support from that. I think most of the media in Montana did some pretty good coverage on that one, so we are in support of that one as well. House Bill 310 would establish a grant program to increase community shelter capacity for homeless populations. That one does not have a hearing scheduled yet, but I imagine it'll be coming up soon, and of course that one will be one of our lobbying priorities as well. Some of the bills that we are opposing that are still moving are Senate Bill 133, which would revise impact fee laws. It would remove our ability to have an administrative fee in there, and it would also remove a lot of our other facilities, including parks, from impact fee, from the things that we're allowed to charge an impact fee for. So we are opposing that one. It would be very difficult for us, and that one has not come out of committee yet. It did have a hearing. Senate Bill 146 is the Private Property Protection Act, and that one basically removes all our zoning abilities except things that are directly public health and safety. So that one's challenging, and we are opposing that along with the Montana League of Cities and Towns and others across the state. Senate Bill 96, I think I mentioned the first week, that's the Working Animal Protection Act, which again would, we have a ban on like circus animals and exotic animals in town, and that particular bill would override that ordinance that we have. And that one did actually pass out of the Senate, or out of committee, and is moving to the floor. So that one's still moving forward. And then finally, Senate Bills 117 and Senate Bill 2. Those are the two I just wanted to mention that Mr. DeGrampre and Ms. Buchanan spoke of earlier this evening as far as how we treat newly taxable property. And so both of those have had hearings, but they have not had a committee vote yet. So that's the status of those items.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Do we have any questions from council? Councilor Jordan.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. Is it all right to ask why we oppose certain things or for certain things? Because I'm curious about the Animal Protection Act and why we're opposed to it.
Yes, and Ms. Miller, you bet. I think should be your most informed person, you bet.
So that particular bill, the challenge with that one is that it It would regulate, so we have the ordinance that we adopted several years ago where we basically don't allow certain exotic animals in town, so elephants and things like that. And that ordinance, or that law as it's written, would prevent our ability to regulate that. So we say that they can only be used for like educational purposes, and that says you can't regulate any kind of animal, even if it's just an exhibit. So that's where that one came from, is it directly would directly conflict with something adopted by City Council. So.
Sure, you bet.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I also, not really knowing how some things work still, even though I'm on City Council, I just want to say that I am really grateful that the city has taken a stance on HB 121 in opposition of a really cruel law that would be really ridiculous and difficult and an invasion of privacy to enforce. I really wish that the state would stop focusing on how people identify and start focusing on things like content of character and people who break the law and people who make life miserable for other people, and not just our trans and non-binary friends and community members who just want to live a peaceful life. So I just really, really want to thank the city for taking a stand on that one. That was really important to me, so I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Jordan. Appreciate that. Any other council comments or questions this evening? Not seeing any. Not seeing any online? All righty. Ms. Miller, thank you for keeping this updated and also, keeping the document online that's available to the public. So for members of the public watching and listening to our city council meeting, we do provide updates on our legislation that we are tracking. We provide our position on that. It's located on our homepage on our website. So you just scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a picture of the state capitol. You can click on that and it will bring you to our legislative webpage, which is a host of a whole bunch of information, including this legislation tracker. All right. Well, that wraps up all of our business content then for the city council meeting. And so we'll move on to public comment on non-agenda items. Public comment, we ask you to limit to 3 minutes, and please say your name for the record, starting with folks in the room. Public comment on non-agenda items.
Big K, Montana. I want to know who's not enjoying the comfort of natural gas these days.
Thank you, Big K, Montana. Any other public comment?
Hello, good evening. My name is Carrie Schreiber. Two issues of concern today. One, I'm wanting to speak about the concerns around our complex housing crisis, and complex issues require multifaceted solutions. Understand we are currently 3,300 housing units short of ideal, and that we have 650 unhoused people. We also have nearly 1,000 Airbnbs, which we can assume were formerly residential properties that are no longer available for that usage. And we just really urge that we would take a look at cities that have successfully done some type of restrictions so that doesn't go to a skyrocketing problem, and we have seen that problem happen in other places. Whitefish is one of those, but I'm sure there's places that are closer to our size that have addressed that issue as well. With the Zootown Music Festival coming up, the first of a 5-year commitment that's encouraging tourism into our city from all over the country and from well-to-do people, I think that we could end up losing a lot more residences to vacation homes, and it seems to be an important aspect to look at in the whole situation. Also, there was a Parks and Rec committee meeting on January 8th, and we ran out of time to hear council comment about the Prost master plan report, or for the public to have time to comment on that. And that was disappointing not to be able to be a part of that conversation. I know that there'll be some further opportunities. February 26th at the library, there'll be a public opportunity to engage with that. But back to my pet issue of the Southgate Crossing, We saw a big need for access to nature parks in that area, and saw that through this study that we'd spent a lot of money to gather the information. So if we can please use that information in a timely manner when we're making the plans for this special little place in the middle of town that could give us access to nature. That would be great to see that type of commitment in writing, since we know that that commitment has been verbally promised in the past, and our neighborhood has not had that come through for us. So you can understand, I hope, our desire to have things in writing, since it's fallen out in the past. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Schreiber. Any other members of the public wishing to make comment this evening? Okay, not seeing any in the audience. Then how about any folks online? Any members of the public? Online. Okay, not seeing any. That does wrap up our public comment for the evening on items not on the agenda. Thank you very much for those that came down and participated. We'll just move to communications from the mayor and city council members. I just wanted to wrap off of what Carrie Schreiber was just speaking to. The Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Open House is on February 26th of 2025. So there is a host of information on the Engage Missoula website. I hope members of the public will take a look at that. It's an incredible amount of information for what led us here, and a lot of opportunity to participate. So really appreciate all of the public engagement to date on that item. The other quick mention that I'd like to just add to the comment around the Downtown SAM project. Again, Engage Missoula is a really excellent tool. There is an Engage Missoula Downtown SAM page. There is a lot of information on there. I would encourage folks to get on there, not only to learn more about it, but also there's increased ways to provide comment and your opinion. The design is not decided yet, so that's a really important element to make sure that we are clear about, is that the final design of this project is not decided yet, and that's the intent of the Downtown SAM working group. That group meets regularly, and they do have the contract with DJNA, which was stated this evening, and it's members of, so that consultant, the public, and that includes business owners and other community members, interested parties that that reflect interest of the diverse interests that we have here in Missoula. So I'm looking forward to ongoing conversations around how this project rolls out, and but would encourage folks to take a look at that Engage Missoula page if you haven't had a chance yet. And of course, always encourage council members to send questions to staff that we could help answer as well. The last thing I'd like to say is congratulations to the team of folks that have opened up the Watershed Navigation Center. The Watershed Navigation Center is located on what was called the Trinity site. So it's at the corner of Broadway, West Broadway, and Mullen. This is a project that's in partnership with Homeward, the Missoula Housing Authority, and Blue Line Development. That group built this project with the intention of partnering with community members and community service providers. On that site, there are 130 workforce homes. This is the property that has that. It's a big, looks like a big bumblebee. It's a 4-story, 3-story yellow building. That's inclusive of 30 permanent supportive housing apartments for folks that are have lived with chronic homelessness. And there is 24-hour voluntary services on site. Adjacent to that is a commercial space that is the Navigation Center. It is mutually exclusive to the apartments or to the permanent supportive homes there, but it's available. And it's been challenging to figure out as a group of partners how to feasibly open up that center. And I'm pleased to say that it is happening. I had an opportunity to tour the building on Friday. Our partners, Partnership Health Center, have taken the lead as the master leaseholder there. They've opened their clinic on site. So in that space, there's both a medical clinic and then there is behavioral health and counseling space. It really is an opportunity to bring folks in and get them connected to the most basic of things. Do you need to take a shower? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Wash your clothes? Those kinds of things then allow folks to also take advantage of medical care. And while there, be introduced to somebody that might be able to talk with them about housing options, for example. And so it really is something that's going to be an excellent asset for our community. I can very much respect their slow roll to open and want to do it right. It's Partnership Health Center, in addition to other folks like the criminal justice center with the county, so there'll be a reintegration program with folks that are reintegrating from the community, from our Department of Corrections, and other organizations will be partnering to help folks get what they need, ideally in that location. So it's exciting to see that underway. It was a major effort of mine before I was elected mayor, and so I was really excited to see that the doors are opening here shortly. And again, it will be by referral only at the beginning, and I'll just back up why that is. The slow roll is so the service providers can make sure that they can do it right from the beginning and don't over leverage or overextend themselves, and I can certainly understand that. So ideally, they're just building on success as they go. So I will also say that just if you do a quick internet search and look up the Watershed Navigation Center, you'll see a mural that has been painted on the interior by Aspen and Cameron Decker. It is exquisite. The idea there being that Native and Indigenous members of our community represent a disproportionate number of houseless neighbors. And so it was always our goal to make sure that we have that as a welcoming place for our Indigenous neighbors. And so they were contracted to paint this mural. And it is really gorgeous. There's a newspaper article that pops up from the Charcusta News, and they say that the mural is really, it highlights the heritage of the Salish and Kootenai tribes, blending traditional design symbols and stories into a visual representation of resilience and cultural identity. The space is really exceptional. I hope as council members you have an opportunity to take a tour of it at some point, and I'm certain that the service providers would be happy to do that. So just wanted to put that out there and congratulate this team of people, and we are continuing to make progress, and it's great to see. All right, so I'll turn this over to to council members for comment this evening, and start in the room here with Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll pass tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jordan?
Thanks, I'll pass.
Okay, and Councillor Carlino?
I can also pass.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones? All righty, and Savage? Okay. How about you, Councillor Becerra?
Pass, thank you.
All right, you bet. Councillor Melson?
Yeah, just a quick note to congratulate Brittany Palmer, who's the executive director at the North Missoula Community Development Corporation. She was just accepted into the Lincoln Vibrant Communities Fellowship Program through Claremont University and through the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. I'm also one of the fellows, was one of the inaugural fellows from Missoula, as well as our, I think, Deputy Director of CPDI, Montana James. So great to see another Missoulian stepping up to take advantage of this awesome program, and I hope the three of us can encourage more people to apply and build a nice little cohort of practitioners working on land use issues in Western Montana. So congrats, Brittany.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Melson. Councillor Nugent?
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Quickly, I had the opportunity this past weekend to attend a crosstown basketball game between Sentinel and Hellgate. And before the games, there were two young ladies at Hellgate High School doing a senior project for, I believe, the National Honor Society. and they were highlighting youth suicide rates in athletes that are higher than just the population in general. And it was just a good reminder that we talk about this sometimes with our first responders and other groups that aren't traditionally thought of to be associated with mental health and mental health crises, and that it's okay to talk about these things out loud, that in fact you should ask for help, and that we should do all we can to end the stigma of mental health and mental health issues. So I just wanted to highlight that and thank those two young ladies for bringing that to the attention of people attending those games.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Are there counselors online that wish to make comment this evening? Counselor Farmer.
I can pass. Thank you, Mayor.
You bet. And I saw a head shake, Counselor Vasika, for no. And, okay. And Counselor Cheryl.
Nope, I'll pass. Thanks.
All right, you bet. Counselor Henderson?
I'll pass as well. Thanks so much, Madam Mayor.
Okay, absolutely. You bet. Well, all right then. That does wrap up our meeting. We'll go ahead and conclude at 8:01 p.m. Thanks, everybody.